Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story that's unfolding right now in the heart of Eastern Europe, a story of power, pressure, and politics. Belarus, led by Alexander Lukashenko, finds itself trapped in one of the most dangerous geopolitical tightropes of modern times, between Vladimir Putin's tightening grip from Moscow and the growing assertiveness of Kyiv. Lukashenko is running out of space to maneuver. The question many are asking is how long can Belarus stay balanced before it breaks? Alexander Lukashenko, often called Europe's last dictator, has ruled Belarus for nearly 3 decades with an iron hand. His government has survived protests, sanctions, and international isolation. Yet today, his biggest challenge doesn't come from within, but from his two powerful neighbors, Russia and Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has redrawn the geopolitical lines of Eastern Europe, and Belarus sits uncomfortably close to the center of it all. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Belarus played a controversial role. Moscow used Belarusian territory as a launchpad for its troops and missiles, effectively making Belarus a co-belligerent in the eyes of Kyiv and the West. Lukashenko, however, has tried to insist that Belarus itself is not part of the war. He has repeatedly claimed that his army has not crossed into Ukraine and that he's only allowing Russian forces to train or protect the borders, but few believe these words anymore. For Putin, Belarus is strategically vital. It serves as a northern gateway into Ukraine and a buffer zone against NATO's eastern flank. For Lukashenko, this alliance with Russia has been a double-edged sword. On one hand, Moscow's financial aid and political support have kept his regime alive, especially after the 2020 mass protests that nearly toppled him. On the other hand, the dependence on Putin has grown so deep that Lukashenko's sovereignty is now largely symbolic. Every move he makes is watched, weighed, and influenced by the Kremlin. Kyiv, meanwhile, sees Belarus as both a threat and a potential opportunity. Ukrainian intelligence constantly monitors Belarusian airfields, fearing another invasion route from the north. Yet, at the same time, there's hope that Lukashenko might one day turn against Moscow if the political winds change. But can he? That's the question haunting analysts and diplomats alike. Internally, Lukashenko's position is weaker than it appears. His economy is struggling under heavy Western sanctions. Belarus's industries, which were once integrated with European markets, have been cut off. Inflation is rising, foreign investment has vanished, and many young Belarusians have fled abroad, unwilling to live under authoritarian rule or risk being drawn into war. Even within the elite, cracks are beginning to show. Some officials are uneasy about Belarus becoming little more than a satellite of Russia, yet Lukashenko has survived crises before. He's a master manipulator, a survivor who plays both sides to stay in power. He has flirted with the West in the past, releasing political prisoners or offering vague promises of reform when it suited him. But now his options are closing. Putin expects loyalty, and defiance could come at a deadly cost. The Kremlin has already absorbed parts of Belarus's military, energy, and security infrastructure, blurring the line between the two states. Many analysts believe that full political union is only a matter of time. On the battlefield, the situation adds even more tension. Russian troops continue to use Belarus as a logistical base, and joint military drills are happening frequently. Ukrainian forces are preparing for the possibility of a renewed offensive from the north. Every move Lukashenko makes, every statement, every visit to Moscow is interpreted through the lens of war, and the Belarusian people are watching nervously, fearing that their country could be dragged fully into the conflict. Recently, Lukashenko has tried to appear as a mediator. He's offered to host peace talks and called for dialogue between Russia and Ukraine, but few take these offers seriously. Both Kyiv and the West see them as empty gestures meant to buy him time. In truth, Lukashenko is trapped. He cannot break with Putin without losing his power, yet continuing to back Moscow risks turning Belarus into a pariah state or even a battlefield. There are also growing fears of internal instability. Underground resistance movements inside Belarus have sabotaged railways and communication lines used by Russian troops. Dozens of activists have been arrested and labeled as terrorists. These groups, while small, reflect a larger undercurrent of anger among Belarusians who feel their country has been hijacked by Moscow's war. The government's crackdown has been brutal, with new laws expanding surveillance and punishment for dissent. The West, for its part, continues to pressure Lukashenko through sanctions and diplomatic isolation, but this approach has its limits. Pushing Belarus too hard might drive it even deeper into Putin's arms. Some European officials quietly suggest a more balanced strategy, keeping communication channels open, offering incentives for neutrality, and trying to prevent Belarus from becoming an active combatant. However, as long as Lukashenko relies on Russian power to stay in control, meaningful change seems distant. The regional implications are huge. If Belarus were to collapse politically or join the war directly, it could open a new front that reshapes the conflict in Ukraine. NATO forces in Poland and the Baltic states are already on high alert. The entire balance of Eastern Europe could shift overnight if Lukashenko loses control or if Russia decides to take over entirely. The line between an independent Belarus and a Russian province is becoming dangerously thin. At the same time, Lukashenko is trying to maintain an illusion of independence. He occasionally criticizes Moscow's tactics or warns against the use of nuclear weapons, pretending to assert his own authority. But these statements are often followed by symbolic gestures of loyalty, visits to Putin, joint agreements, or military cooperation announcements. It's a dance of survival where every step could be his last. In recent months, there have been signs that Belarusian society is changing beneath the surface. Many Belarusians, especially the younger generation, see Ukraine's struggle as their own a fight for freedom and identity against authoritarian control. Despite the heavy censorship, news from Ukraine still spreads through social media and underground networks. The fear that Belarus could become the next battlefield has sparked quiet conversations about the future, what happens after Lukashenko, and whether Belarus can ever be truly free again. For now, Lukashenko remains in power, but the walls are closing in. Putin's demands are growing, Kyiv's patience is wearing thin, and the West is tightening its grip economically. The balance that has kept Belarus afloat for decades is beginning to crumble. Every decision carries enormous risk. If he leans too far toward Moscow, he loses the little independence he has left. If he tries to pivot westward, he risks Putin's wrath. It's a no-win situation, and Lukashenko knows it. Belarus stands at a crossroads between war and peace, submission and sovereignty, survival and collapse. The world is watching closely, but for Lukashenko, time may be running out. In this dangerous game between Putin and Kyiv, one wrong move could push Belarus over the brink, and when that happens, the consequences will reach far beyond Minsk. If you found this analysis informative, don't forget to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most critical geopolitical flashpoints.